The Great Tri-State Tornado of 1925 was one of the longest-ranging and deadliest storms to ever occur in the history of the United States. Destruction of the event. 695 recorded deaths, over 2,000 injured victims, $16.5 million in damages, $1.4 million adjusted into inflation, ranged over 200 miles, projected F5 level storm, estimated top wind speed of 300 miles per hour, diameter of a mile or more. On March 18, 1925, the Great Tri-State Tornado eased into parts of Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, resulting in mass destruction of homes, land, and agriculture. Starting its central accumulation process in southeast Ellington, Missouri, the storm grew stronger and more violent as it traveled to the northeast into several counties of Illinois and Indiana. There was a total death toll of approximately 695 people, most of which happened in the southern parts of Illinois, making up a majority of about 500 of those documented deaths. Researchers have thought of this storm as synoptically unusual, mainly for its large areal spread and its environmental impact, but also the duration of time it took for its birth, evolution, maturity, and demise. Being almost 100 years old, this storm is still being researched from its meteorological, environmental, and cultural standpoint. To really understand the event as a whole, we need to understand the storm's meteorological and environmental factors, to see why and how the storm took place and progressed. Let's get into it. Deposition of a tornado. For the formation of a tornado to occur, there needs to be at least 4 key ingredients: moisture, instability, vertical forcing, and wind shear. Tornadoes form from a large thunderstorm. Warm, humid air rises inside the thunder clouds, while cool air falls along with rain or hail. These conditions can cause spinning air currents inside the cloud. Although the spinning currents start out horizontally, they can turn vertically and drop down from the cloud, becoming a tornado. The wind changes direction and wind speed increases, causing a horizontal spinning at the lower atmosphere. The air rises with the thunderstorm's updrafts, causing the horizontal rotation to become vertical. Finally, the lower cloud base becomes a wall cloud and a tornado forms. For further insights, look to the right to see a diagram of tornado formation. The synoptic, environmental, and meteorological view of the tornado. Documents show that the storm started in the early afternoon as air masses were met in threefold of warm, cold, and clouded fronts. These atmospheric conditions were proved unstable, working from earlier precipitative storms that were formed by harsh differences in north to south temperature gradients, not uncommon for early spring. It is believed by severe storm meteorologists today that the tornado was carried out mainly due to the interaction between the dry line and pressure from the surfacing warm front, contributing to the supercell's deep rotating updrafts. The life of the tornado is said to have lasted around a duration of 3 hours. Aftermath of the event. Problems progressed more evidently as civilians who lived in or around the storm tried to rummage with what they could of a life they once knew. After the tri-state tornado, thousands of people, now homeless, were left without shelter or food. Fires erupted, growing in conflagrations in some places, exacerbating the damage throughout the land. Homelessness reaped through all cities and jobs were lost, causing economic decline. Crime rose as people tried to loot for resources that were diminished due to the storm. Environmental resources were left almost barren as cropland was destroyed and waterways polluted. It seems like hope had all been lost for most people for the return of a life of contentment and peace. It was not until the Red Cross came and provided relief efforts that the trauma of the event subsided and eased. The American Red Cross proved many relief services, including shelter, food, and comfort to families affected by the tornado. They also distributed cleanup supplies such as shovels, rakes, tarps, and work gloves. They conducted damage assessments of homes impacted by storms and provided mental health support, including counseling for families impacted by the storms and tips on self-care and how to cope with the aftermath. Cultural impact. The Great Tri-State Tornado was an eye-opener to many people and brought on a cultural impact that would carry out to future generations. Before the storm, people overlooked the effects of what a severe storm could really do. It was not until after the storm that towns practiced a daily weather forecast that could be shared in a city's jurisdiction. It is said that counties and their governments were authorized to downplay and misrepresent meteorological observations to ease the amount of fear and concern for projected storm occurrences among its citizens. This was also applied to the Great Tri-State Tornado, where local governments were aware of the destruction that the storm could cause by local scientists, but decided to disregard the warning as an attempt to shield people, especially farmers, from panic. Presently, there is an ample number of resources of meteorological data to be shared and recorded for all people globally and in the United States. After the publicity and first-hand accounts of the tornado, people took it into their own hands to build and convert underground spaces as shelters for anticipated disasters. It was now a normality to have an underground storm shelter on a home's property, especially in rural areas. Making these shelters was also an example of the relatable devastation that these storms could cause, meaning that people had the knowledge and emotional connectivity to understand other people's struggles related to these types of massive storms. With this, there was a remarkable amount of empathy being practiced. Empathy was shared not just in places of interest, but also all parts of the United States. Americans saw the damage that had been done, and they wanted to help in any way they could. Humanitarian relief efforts were then accomplished in trying to rebuild these shattered cities by people donating and sending over basic resources. This amount of empathy can be seen in today's natural disasters, such as hurricanes and earthquakes around the globe. State emergency procedures were also taken in effect, an example being tornado alarms being taken into effect for the first of every month. Community service leaders like firefighters and EMTs also have the skills to prepare and combat severe weather devastations. In conclusion, after a severe weather disaster, it is important to take care of yourself and your loved ones. It is important to be prepared and informed about current global and local weather. Not every storm will be the same, but as they occur, it is always best to treat it with caution. I would recommend reading some published articles such as this one to know more about the Great Tri-State Tornado and to see what other people could do to be informed and have knowledge about massive weather disasters. Works cited. Works cited photos.